Because we've been announcing that Yorkshire Water hosepipe ban as well that comes into force at the weekend. So, there's a serious side to all that as well, isn't there? More from Carol a little later.
Now, as we have been hearing this morning, in just a few hours, the public inquiry into the Post Office Horizon IT scandal will publish the very first part of its findings.
Yes, it'll focus on compensation and the impact on the more than 900 victims. Well, two of them are with us this morning. Lee Castleton, who became the first sub-postmaster affected by the scandal to launch legal action against the Post Office, and Tim Brentnall, who's fighting for compensation after being prosecuted for false accounting in 2010. Morning to you both. Good to have you here. Lee, let's start with you. I mean, the significance of today, because, and we should be really clear, this has been split into two bits, hasn't it? So today is about the impact on people like you in your situation and about compensation.
Yep.
The other bit is about the wrongdoing and who caused all of this what caused this. Talk to me about today and the importance of it.
I think it becomes really important, and I think it's been very cleverly done by the inquiry team. I think they've obviously thought long and hard about whether the effects and the compensation would be swamped by the people who did it and the possible prosecutions of those people. And I think it's quite poignant, really, to look back before you move forward. We're still fighting to move forward and move forward in a way that helps all of the group to recover, but importantly, you need to recognise what happened and how that happened. And I think this will be a very, very important day.
So, just remind us where you are both up to in your compensation fight.
Well, I served my claim against the Post Office in the summer last year, and they came back with an offer of 17% just before Christmas. 17%, which obviously we rejected. I've spent the last 6 months with my legal team rewriting that claim to try and address the problems that they talk about, giving us the benefit of the doubt and not being so adversarial. But when you're facing things like this, it still feels like you're in litigation, because if they see an opportunity to minimise your claim, they take it.
It's the same question for you in that respect, Lee, but, where are you now? And also, how would you put a number on something like this? And, each story is individual, and we've heard many of them. They're horrendous stories. How would you start to put a number for compensation?
I think it's just important, not maybe the number, but to feel as though that you've completed the journey. I think that's far more important than the number itself. I think the number can be equated by people that work in the legal profession quite easily. They seem as though they have a rule and a way of working things out. This is, as Tim said, litigation without a judge. It's just terrible to initially put the compensation schemes in the hands of Post Office in the first place was abhorrent. Really, when you look at all the documents, 6.5 million documents now in circulation within the inquiry, there is nobody better placed than the High Court judge. Why wasn't it given to Sir Wyn to give, compensation? It would have been an independent party.
Tim, when they gave you that number of 17%, or that figure that equated to 17% of what you were claiming, what was their justification?
That I couldn't evidence parts of my claim. A large part of my claim, because I'm in my mid-40s, is future loss of earnings. And they kind of said, well, you had these plans and you can't prove that this would happen. Even so, COVID comes along, retail faces a downturn, we're not paying you your forecasted things. We don't pluck these numbers out of the air ourselves. They're put together by our legal teams and by forensic accountants. You give all of your records and your business details over to these people, and they come back and say, this is what it's cost you. And then we have, at that point, it was Post Office or their lawyers saying, we're not paying it. I mean, people with overturned convictions, like myself, our scheme has been put in the hands of the government now, but I'm hearing from my solicitor that that's actually slowing things down. We need speed because people are dying.
I was just going to say, you mentioned you're in your 40s, so I wonder if you are able to look ahead a little bit more and think, I've got an appetite for a fight here. But there are some people who are older who maybe just don't have that time, the luxury of that time.
Speaking to several people that I'm close to in the scheme, they've had health scares themselves, or their partner has, and then they accept lesser offers because they want to draw a line under it and be able to move on and enjoy the time that they have left. And it's just unfair.
Lee, what happens next here? Because obviously you're still waiting to get that report that's out today. And I know, there's protesters outside there now, calling for exactly the things that you've been talking about with us. I mean, that protest there, this is South London, it's the Oval Cricket Ground, isn't it, where you'll start to get an indication of what that looks like. Are you hopeful at this stage, at any point, that today marks an important shift?
The sad thing is that we can only have recommendations made by Sir Wyn. They're not going to be statutory. They're not going to be anything other than just recommendations. But I think one of the best things that he's done is probably getting this out early so that he can revisit it if he needs to. So if the recommendations are uptaken, he can re-report and re-report and re-report. This is a final report, so it means that they have to at least look at it and decide what they're going to do. So this is going to be a marker in the sand, if you like, where they can say, this is where we are, this is what you've done, this is what we need to recognise. We need to change the speed of the compensation. 349 deaths now within the group. This is abhorrent behaviour in delaying. And you're talking about a company where 10 years ago, they assessed the risk, the future risk of people like Tim, who had potentially criminal convictions to overturn. In one particular case, which I'm being told I'm allowed to talk about, is Vipin Patel, who at 10 years ago had his claim risk assessed by Post Office. This is an internal document. And they assessed his personal claim at more than £1 million 10 years ago. He's struggling with a £250,000 claim. We're 10 years on. It can't have shrunk. It can't possibly have. But what's happening is the pressure that's being applied, the way that people are doing things, is causing people to have reduced claims. This is litigation without a judge, I'm afraid.
So, having been through the worst type of pressure, there's almost another wave of pressure now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a scandal following a scandal.
Without a doubt.
And with the report coming out later on today, you called it a line in the sand.
Yes.
You've had other landmarks before, haven't you, throughout this whole process? How does this one compare?
I'd like to see a different. I don't know if we're jaded or if we're just battle-worn. We've had several occasions where we think something's going to change. Yeah. But we were talking beforehand, and we both expect Sir Wyn is fully across our position and he understands where we are. But tomorrow we'll wake up and nothing will have changed.
I think the pressure will be there, though, and I think it's important that the optic is seen. Government generally, and we are talking about government now. Post Office have been pretty much completely removed. I know that a lot of the staff have been retained, but this is about an optic to the government, and I think that the more we shout and scream about it, hopefully, the more opportunities there are to change things.
And this is, as we said, part one. Yeah. Part two comes later.
Yeah.
And that's about who did this.
Yeah.
Like you said, today is the line in the sand, maybe, but there may be disappointment. I guess, how hopeful are you that that'll actually deliver anything as well for you in terms of closure?
Well, I think it's all part of the path. I hope that we live in a country where when you put facts in front of a court, they judge people properly, and I hope and look forward to the fact that people will be judged on their actions in the past, and they will be held to account for that. It's time that we started to do that properly. It really is. When you look at all the other scandals that have happened in this country over the years that people have just, walked away from on one side, that have been perpetrators, whilst the scandal victims are having to pick up the pieces of their lives consistently. And I think that needs to change. And if we don't change that, this world will be a worse place.
Lee, Tim, thank you for talking to us. I really hope there's some progress when we get that report later. Good to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you. It's 8:30.